Welcome back to the Partnernomics Show. Have a great episode for you today. I am joined by Jay McBain. So for those of us that are in the channel in partnerships, Jay needs no introduction. But if you're not familiar with Jay, I certainly encourage you to follow him on LinkedIn. I think he has close to 60,000 followers. There's a lot of us folks that look at him and to him and his organization for insights on the channel, on partnerships, what's happening in the landscape. But it's been really fun recording this episode with Jay, just kind of talking about 2025. Now that we're at the end of the year in December, recording this, and just, what's the landscape of partnerships now? And how can companies best leverage partnerships? I reached out to Jay. We had recently got the book launch out the door. And so I asked Jay if he would take some time out of his busy schedule to cruise through launch and give me his thoughts on it. And so he was kind enough to do that. And so I wanted to share his feedback on this episode. So I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed recording it. Here we go.
Welcome to the Partnernomics Show, where industry thought leaders discuss the hottest topics in partnerships, ecosystems, and innovation.
Welcome back to another episode of the Partnernomics Show. Great to be with you. And man, we have the man of channel partnerships, ecosystems, man, anything in indirect, Mr. Jay McBain with us. Jay, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me back.
Man, it's so good to catch up with you. I guess the only constant is change in this world, man. It's just wild. Each year I reflect back. Now we're into December, just looking back of just how much more change and growth and what AI is doing, so many different things, man, tons to catch up on. So I appreciate you carving out time from your busy schedule. I know you're burning up the friendly skies. I love seeing the posts of everything you're doing with between the family and conferences and going out and spreading all the information that you have that people like me and our clients, we consume and really appreciate. So thanks for what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's 100 keynotes this year, so a lot of different cities. And last week we were just swimming with turtles in the Galapagos, so all kind of things going on.
Man, you have to have enough points where you could jump on with Elon and go to the moon a couple different times, can't you? Can you redeem your points that way?
Not really. I don't think I manage it well enough to do that. But when you're flying to small islands in Ecuador, it's not your main American Airlines that are flying there, so you're just trying to pick up in any turboprop plane you can find.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jay, for this particular episode, I want to let's focus in on the SMB space, and I would say like 500 employees and smaller. I know that your organization, Omdia, you guys do tons of research for enterprise space, and then coming down from there. But I would like to kind of chat specifically to small, medium-sized businesses, and kind of to those CEOs or those executives that are you're trying to figure out partnerships. They either have partnership programs, probably not performing at the level they want, or it just doesn't have the maturity that they want. Or maybe for some of them, just kind of thinking about partnerships and how to leverage and lean into them for maybe the very first time to really get this indirect path of revenue going. So just to kind of set the stage for that, so this is a good time, December. I'd love to just kind of get your analyst take on, through that lens, what has 2025 been and meant, and what has unfolded for us?
Yeah, well, as an analyst, let's start a little bit with the numbers. So we're going to finish this year, the tech industry globally is going to finish at $5.3 trillion. That's the business side of it, from the smallest flower shop in SMB up through the largest bank or government. About out of the 5.3 trillion, about $1 trillion in hardware, about $1 trillion in software. There's still a 1-to-1 ratio. And then the rest of it is services. And almost 2/3 of the pie is services. One of the plot twists in 2025 is that services are growing faster than most product categories. So partners in a lot of cases are growing faster than their vendors. So that's been good news. Obviously a lot of things we've talked about in the past. 2025 saw a new buyer from a demographics perspective. Those born after 1982, millennials, now make up 51% of spend. So we went through that changeover. Some things that we had predicted, like integrations, become the most important thing in their buying criteria, and that happened. And so when we talk about SMB and we start talking about these smaller companies, integrations are one of those key things. Other things that happened in 2025, we're at year 2 of the AI era. One of the interesting things about our industry, and we had a pre-chat before we started recording, is that our industry, even though it's been the fastest growing industry in the world for 50 years, it kind of moves along 20-year eras. And it's almost a perfect, if you think of the 60s and 70s, the IBM 360, the Sabre system that all of our flights are hooked up to, every banking withdrawal or deposit we've ever made sits on one of those mainframes from the 70s. But August 12th, 1981 kicked off a new 20 years. So we went into this client server era, but the richest companies in the world and the richest people in the world offshoot these 20-year eras. Remember Microsoft and Bill Gates? But around 1995, we didn't think we'd share a credit card over the internet. Jeff Bezos thought differently. 6 years later, he started AWS, got made fun of on the front cover of magazines. Well, people will rent their data, and the cloud era took off from about 2000 through 2020. March of 23, though, is ChatGPT, is when our neighbors and friends saw it for the first time. We triggered a new era based on a consumer trend. But in year 2 of AI, on the business side, it's been very underwhelming. While we've watched NVIDIA become the richest company in the world, we saw Elon Musk become the richest person in the world. We saw ChatGPT become the fastest growing product in history. Now with 800 million people that use it every day. So all these things happened on the consumer side. On the business side, we saw an MIT article saying 95% of projects are failing. And we kind of scoffed at it because they only talked to 52 people. They probably want that one back. But we're seeing, Accenture and other people saying 90% failure rate. So it's been underwhelming. And so we're trying to figure out now year 2 of the next 20 years. But suffice it to say, there's going to be trillionaires that get created during this 20-year era. And just to kind of close on it, every 20 years, half the Fortune 500 churns. So if you go back 20 years from today, 52% of those companies no longer exist. If you're not in the Fortune 500, if we talked about SMB, 71% of tech companies fail over the course of 10 years. SMB makes up 40% of the 5.3 trillion in terms of what we're going to be talking about today. So as you think about your go-to-market, it's really bifurcated. What do I do top down for the 60% to get my fair share? What do I do bottoms up, grassroots, community-led from the bottom in the 40% to get my fair share? How do I meet in the middle and get more than my fair share?
So from your seat, there's this massive quantity of companies that don't make it long term. What are those core reasons, or what can these SMB CEOs, what do they need to be thinking about to make sure that they're positioning their company for the next 5, 10 plus years? What are the mistakes that are being made that's killing companies?
Yeah, it's so interesting, and I'm going to get to your book in a second. But when you read every book, because every Fortune-sized company that fails has a book written about it, and they all follow the same arc, the story. How could this company invent the thing that ended up killing them? You think of Kodak with the digital
Kodak,
camera.
yeah.
So many companies ended up just not seeing it, innovator's dilemma, or not seeing the changes, not seeing the changes happening around them. How could they be so insulated? How could they, be so large? How could, IBM being the biggest company in the world and getting broken up by the U.S. government, that they were so large and such a monopoly, allow a very young, disheveled Bill Gates to fly into Boca Raton and hand him the keys to the kingdom? How could they see that? And, here's a company that's getting broken up as a monopoly by the government that 13 years from the day of that meeting with Bill Gates didn't make payroll. That's how quickly things change in this industry. And every company is sitting on that, kind of precipice. We think they're the Magnificent Seven. We think they're worth 4 or 5 trillion. But they're arguing to antitrust regulators that, listen, we're one meeting with a young, disheveled person away from not making payroll 13 years from now. So that's kind of this, you blame the CEO, you blame the board with fiduciary responsibilities. Then you go with, 2020 hindsight. Every other chapter is like, how could they not see this? How could they not see that? How could they not see this? The role of an analyst here, I just talked about the new buyer, for example. For 20 years from now, the books that will be written about the failures, one of the chapters are how could they not see these younger buyers? Different psychology, different behavior, different buying journey. How could they not see that integrations became the #1 buying criteria? How could they, we're trying to shout from the rooftops that this is happening. It happened in 2025 this year. The companies that don't get that, it's going to be a chapter in your book. But the other chapters in the book, though, is partnerships. It's this idea that in a platform economy, no one does it alone. If you go back to that new buyer, they buy things in 7-layer stacks. They don't buy one product. There's no company you can buy from to not get fired from anymore. The reason that services are outgrowing products is because they're stitching together 7 of them on average to solve every problem. So in that world, you're working with alliances, you're working with integrations, you're working with services and channel partnerships, but your go-to-market changes completely. And these are the, how would we write the book today as opposed to 20 years from now when we're looking backwards?
Yeah. So Jay, you mentioned it, and I asked you to grab a copy of Launch if you would. So yeah, we wrote the book Partnernomics, gosh, I think 8 or 9 years ago, put it out, and I would call that as like more of a philosophical overarching operating system for more of, I would say, even an enterprise organization. It was kind of like my corporate detox from 13 years at Sprint and other companies. And with Launch, over the last couple of years, with a lot of our clients, certainly in the SMB space, again, 500 employees and smaller, a lot of those folks just saying, man, there's just so much noise out there. Our direct sales path has become so costly, so painful. Is there a better way? Is there another way? Is there another horse that we can bet on? And that's what we wanted to share with them with Launch, is what we've learned over the last 10 years working with thousands of companies, 4,400 employees, or partnering professionals or executives that have come on our platform, enrolling in the courses and stuff that we have. We've certainly learned a lot, and we want to basically do it tell all. This is my summary of what I've learned the last 10 plus years of doing this. Man, I would love to just kind of hear your summary, if you would, of what your takeaways were and where Launch kind of hits the mark for the SMB space, and maybe where we didn't.
Yeah, it's great. I think I might have been one of the first purchasers on Audible. So I was on planes going different directions, listening to it right away. So I enjoy it. It's one of those things, and there's a personal story here too. Last time we had a podcast, I worked at Canalys, who got acquired into a company called Omdia, which is a part of Informa. All that being said, is there's in the bigger company I now work at, there's hundreds of magazines, there's hundreds of events that partners go to in every industry and things like that. It's a huge buyer intent company. And you wonder, why would they acquire a channel-facing analyst group? Well, this conclusion, which is the conclusion of Launch, is this idea of the 28 moments before a sale and a considered purchase. Whether you're buying a car, you're buying $1 million in cyber software, it doesn't matter. This 28 moments of the buyer's journey are littered with partners. There's an average of 7 partners that surround every customer. And when you start to look at the moments, it's probably not your ebook they're reading or your event they're coming to or your website that they're coming to. It's probably a partner or a prospective partner that they're using to get educated. Then in the middle of the deal, these are where deals are won and lost at moment 12 through 16. Who's doing the consulting, the advisory, who's doing the design and architecture, who's doing configuration, who's doing all the work. You start to understand when you see these 28 moments filled in, not as theory, but as actual names, faces, and places, you'll find that the average company, especially small companies, they lose deals without knowing there was a deal. There was no moment, no time during the 28 moments that they got any kind of signal, buying signal, that customer was in market for something that they built a product for. So what we're trying to do, with Launch, and what we're trying to do as the industry, is say, if you don't recognize this component, you've got to run marketing, very tight and have all the different vehicles there and make sure that you're you're running at your market. You got to have, a tight sales organization that can take deals. But by the way, 75% of millennials don't want to talk to a person. So there's a complexity there in terms of, the old sales demo and the old sales process is changing, becoming very digital, and it's becoming very partner friendly. But in the middle of all that, there's 7 partners in there that are doing work, that are getting paid for that work, that are going to close the deal in one way or another. If you're working with them, it's better in your favor. If you're not working with them, they're probably creating friction for you in the process. So if you kind of oversimplify all the complexities, 7 partners, 7 different layers of the deal, 13 members of the average buying committee now, if you kind of oversimplify all that into these 28 moments, you're not going to win over the AI era without having partners represent you and say nice things about you at critical moments in that journey.
So let's take, executives that traditionally they've come up, and most of them do not have, it's at least been our experience, most of them do not have extensive experience in channels or in partnerships. A lot of them, it appears, at least again, from my experience, has been in direct sales. And that's kind of the lens they look through whenever their board, their advisors, or their accountant says, we need revenue. We got to have more revenue to fuel all that we're doing. Their brains, most of the time, right? It looks through this direct sales lens. I'd love for you to just kind of chat about and just kind of coach these millennial CEOs, right? We're seeing more and more of them, as you mentioned. How should they think about or educate themselves in this indirect path, in this indirect lane? I think back to my years at Sprint, and I know certainly, well, it's one of the reasons for their demise, in my opinion, is they felt like they had to own everything. They felt like they had to build it. They felt like they had to own it. And was the wrong path. What kind of advice would you coach these younger executives on, or, just SMB executives on how to think about partnerships if they really have that strong direct bent to business?
Yeah, it's not easy either. I did a startup, myself before becoming an analyst. And at the beginning of a company, there's no one there to help you. There's not a lineup of people that are prospective partners out your door, wanting to, take you to be a unicorn and a billionaire and things like that. You get no help. It's very lonely at the beginning. And your board, whether it's advisors or money coming in, an official fiduciary board, are going to be pushing you for 2 things. You need to go find product fit. These are the 20-hour days that people are grinding in the marketplace to go get their product connected with some early adopters and get it morphed into what could sell and get renewed. But the second thing is, again, there's no indirect sales at the beginning. You got to go find customers. You got to have that customer intimacy, because the product you ended up thinking you were bringing to market when you wrote your business plan or thought up this entrepreneurial idea is very rarely the product a couple of years later that ends up selling for you and meeting the market where it needs to be met. So the product fit and this direct sales at the beginning, ends up having the wrong approach, which is at some point you got to unhook that. And the people who got you there will not get you to the next level. So once you've reached those 2 things, a couple things you learn. The other part of the story, by the way, is every startup today is starting in an ecosystem. You don't just build it on your own things. We're talking technology companies here. You've built it with AWS or Microsoft or Google. You've built it with a SaaS platform, perhaps Salesforce, ServiceNow, Workday, HubSpot. You've built it around cyber platforms. You've built yourself already into an ecosystem. So you may understand that there's an alliance piece of this. You understand that there's integrations because your product is probably going to be layer 6 or layer 7 at the beginning of a 7-layer stack. You're not going to be layer 1. You're not the $1 million part of the deal. But you're going to work your way down from layer 6 or 7 to be maybe layer 1 someday. But understanding the integrations are so key. And especially with agentic AI, side doors, back doors, you got to make sure that you're flowing to where your buyer is. But the channel partnerships, it changes. If you're selling marketing software, only 10% of it's resold. You may never have to build a channel. Like Salesforce got to $40 billion direct. You don't need a channel of distribution, but if you're building cybersecurity, 91.6% of it's resold. So you got to determine the market you're in, and you have to have the efficient amount of cash registers there, kind of like a franchise. You're not going to sell hamburgers or cups of coffee if you don't have it spread out to your target addressable market. Now, the services partnerships is the 7 partners that surround each customer. Got to realize that they're in there doing consulting or design or implementation, integration, managed services. They're not there as a cash register, but they're adding friction to you if you don't know who they are. And that potential friction could stop a small company. So you've got to work in these ecosystems to find out who surrounds your customer, figure out that point of sale, figure out the alliances, figure out the integrations, and then work your go-to-market. This is what Launch does such a good job of. Kind of thinking about your go-to-market, thinking about these 28 moments, thinking about working to, through, and with these partners to reduce that friction and get you into bigger pipeline, bigger deals, bigger chance to grow your company.
So Jay, there's any executive that's been in business for any number of years, failure of partnerships is something that a lot of companies look at and know that it absolutely exists there. I talk to executives all the time, partnering professionals, and the percentage of productive partners is very, very small. What, I guess, from your perspective, what are some things that, again, like from a strategy perspective, executives of, hey, let's strengthen our program, let's build a new program, let's tune it, let's mature it. What are some things, what's some advice that you would give them to, because so much money could be wasted, so much time could be wasted, and they have to justify this investment into partnership programs. What advice, what counsel would you give them as they're building or kind of furthering this strategy to lean into partnerships for growth?
Yeah, and this is one of the mistakes we see most often. We always know the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. You'd be surprised, a couple of months ago, we did a top 1,000 partner in the world research. Our world kind of sits in a 99.9, 0.1% principle. So the fact of the matter is, every executive, every board member is saying, hey, why is only 1 or 2 out of 10 of our partners active? Why are they the ones producing? Why do we keep recruiting those 8? Why don't we just recruit the 1s or 2s? I want a whole big group of those guys. Well, the fact of the matter is the world's not that easy, and the world's not that clean. And you could break down, your market by who the buyer is, what industries you're focusing on, what geography, what segment sectors. We talked about SMB, what product layers, and what delivery model. I mean, there's 6 different ways you can break down your market and try to figure out that, best partner, that ideal partner for that market. And that's what you want to focus on, but you can't limit it to trying to find the 1 or 2. Sometimes it's just a numbers game, and you have to recruit all 10, nurture, develop, work through all 10 to find those 1 or 2 that hit it. And for the other ones, it might not be anything about you. It could be timing, it could be where they are, it could be where they're going, it could be just a misalignment. But the fact of the matter is, it's not a bad thing. We go to the Hall of Fame in our industry, in the channel, for batting 200. And, you'd love to bat 800. It just doesn't happen. And that's not the way the world works. And everyone who's these, model of let's cut out our long tail, let's thin down, let's narrow our approach on partners. It sounds really good on paper, and, the theory holds. It just doesn't work in practice. It's a messy place when you're thinking about all of these millions of customers in SMB. You're thinking of all of these moments and all these members of the buying committee and all these things moving around. None of it you control. All of it you can control is if there are 7 partners that are going to win or lose a deal for us, and 2 or 3 of them are saying nice things about us at key moments, we're going to win way more deals. And there's no database that you can subscribe to. There's no internet tool that you can just, or AI tool that you can ChatGPT that you can just go type in, hey, give me a list of my 200 partners that surround every one a customer in my TAM, and send them a letter saying I'm ready to partner and let's go off to the sunset. It's just the world's messy, and that's why we're all gainfully employed.
And even if you do that, get that list, to your point, it's a snapshot. That's what it is today, but that's not what it is tomorrow, or next week, next month, next quarter. Jay, is great segue about AI, and there's more AI tools coming into our space in partnerships. And we see existing tools that are building in AI capabilities. How are you guys seeing AI influence and help in the partnership space? And then as you kind of look out over the next, say, 5 years, how do you see AI either continuing to help or mature or bring efficiencies to the partnership space? How much is it going to help us?
Yeah, I think it's going to change, partnering forever. Over my shoulder, we track 261 companies in channel tech that are actively adding AI functionality and tooling to their products. We have 100 startups who are not on the list yet, but we're actively following as they're producing go-to-market AI type of tools. And there's a holy grail that goes back to that 28 moments again. The holy grail is when you fill in all the boxes. You can see when the customer reads an ebook, whether you wrote it or not. You can see when a customer engages in consulting or advisory, whether you're connected to that partner or not. The holy grail of AI, I'm thinking forward 10 or 20 years. What if every dollar in your TAM, you're chasing this many billions of dollars? What if there was a tool that basically showed you every single customer in that TAM and showed you every single moment? So that would be the company that could get there or near there the fastest. It's a journey, not a destination. But the company that could be 10 or 20% better than their competition is going to win out the AI era. So we're back to tooling again. Which tools? There's all kinds of generative tools which are cool. Like I don't have to send you an email anymore that says, dear blank, blah, 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 click here. I can now, go and, dear Mark, boy, the Chiefs are having a tough time this season. Don't know if they're going to make the playoffs. It's that kind of idea that I can be much more personal than I ever have been before. And I can talk about your business. I can talk about our business. I can kind of create these really hyper personal, but that's generative AI. That's kind of tooling. That's not transformational. When I start to think through the chaos that both in Partnernomics and launch that you talk about, when you break down how much we don't control, but how much data and how much these AI tools can fill in these moments, that changes everything. So I think in the end, today where we are 2 years into the AI era, 99% of business data has yet to be trained into models. That includes every flight you've taken, every banking withdrawal, but it also includes so much of the sales and marketing data hasn't been trained into these models because we don't have non-commercial, non-consumer models that we have the capacity to build, especially in SMB. But the fact of the matter is, as we start to roll in more and more of these tools and build out these channel stacks that complement MarTech and sales tech and CX tech type of stacks, this changes everything. And for any professional that's listening, again, we don't have to be perfect. Probably no one will ever achieve perfection, but we just have to be 10 or 20% better than our competition. And we got to stay ahead because every 3 months, this market is shifting.
Well, something that we've certainly heard a lot about over the last couple of years is, with the continued use of marketing tools, outreach tools, cold prospecting tools. It just created so much noise. So people are pushing back, not listening. And they're, as you mentioned, they're leaning into their network, into their ecosystem for recommendations and for information, for the research. Do you see AI as just being, the noise is only going to get louder because it's easier now to blast prospects with just so much noise because everyone's scraping and clawing, I think, more than what they were 5 or 6, 7 years ago, whenever the old sales equation used to work. Now we talk about, 5 times more stuff in the top of the funnel with all this cold outreach, but getting even smaller and smaller results out of the bottom of that. From that perspective, do you think the noise is going to increase with AI tools? And also, does that help partnerships become all the more relevant and, I would say, mandatory to be using as a tool?
Yeah, I mean, the noise and clutter is going up exponentially, and that's not going to stop. The amount of AI-driven tools to cleanse that noise and clutter for the end customer is also improving at the same rate. So the idea of tuning out and not taking a cold email or not picking up the phone, but again, a study in demographics is important here. While a baby boomer or a Gen X may think of this as overwhelming, this chaos is being invited in by millennials and Gen Z. So they've chosen to move away from a world 30 years ago that you could buy a single company, like buy something from IBM or buy something from Cisco and not get fired for it. You end up buying the 7-layer stack from one company, even though you're taking B and C level products in some cases up that 7-layer stack just because you're protected. Well, this isn't the case. This is a new buyer who says, I'm going to buy best of breed. I'm going to go find the top 7. So I don't mind a little bit of noise and clutter to go find those 7. I'm going to be definitely using AI tools to break through that noise and clutter, all the marketing, stuff that's out there, and get right down. And guess where they're going to go? They're going to go to partners. They're going to find the experts in that particular area. My sub-industry, my geography, my regulatory compliance governed system, situation. They're going to find the people that are the smartest, and they're going to find more than one of them. They're going to buy 7 of them. 7 products, 7 people, 13 members of buying committee. They're inviting chaos. They've stretched this buying. Our grandparents would just drive to the local car dealership, and Larry would set them up with the latest Cadillac. Well, guess what? They're inviting this chaos. They've broken that drive into the dealership into 28 moments. And now they're at the point they don't want to go to the dealership. They don't want to deal with a human. So in this future, you think about chaos, you think about this noise that's out there. This is what the new buyer wants. This is how they get to the best of best. And this is why services grow faster than products, because they have to stitch all this together. They have to integrate it, implement it together. And now with agentic, they have to move through side doors and back doors. This is a completely new world. And we're competing with this. Again, back to launch, the only way we're going to be successful is if we're not going in it alone. We're going to have to, this is a team sport we're all playing. If you look forward, 20 years for the winners and losers, the winners are going to be the best team players.
And it doesn't have to be from inside of your company. As a matter of fact, it won't be. Not all the players. Yeah.
Again, there's going to be 6 other vendors. There's going to be 7 other partners. There's going to be 13 members of your customer that are on the team. Again, it's not us versus them. We're all coming together. We're all in a formation here. And, when you're throwing the ball or handing off the ball or blocking, tackle, whatever your role on the team is, it's still a team. And it doesn't matter. Nobody's looking at what business card you're carrying. The outcome is
I know you're a busy man, so I don't want to take up any more of your day, but I sure appreciate you stopping in and chatting with us, sharing your the latest insights that you guys are putting together for us. And man, I sincerely appreciate what you guys are doing there at Omdia. Keep up the good work.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of the Partnernomics Show. Don't forget to subscribe to get the newest episodes at thepartnernomicsshow.com.